Hey everyone, welcome to Church Online. We are so glad that you could join us today. My name is Megan and I'm a pastor on staff here, and I have the privilege of hosting the service today. For those of you that don't know, we are one church in 3 locations. So if you're ever able to join us in person, we would love for you to check out one of our campuses in Westland, Milwaukee, or Beaverton. In the meantime, we'd love to meet you and help you get connected. The best way to do that is to click on one of the links below or check out our website. Our mission as a church is to inspire people to know, love, and follow Jesus. We absolutely love our local communities and want to do whatever we can to help make a difference in the world as we learn what it means to follow Jesus together. I hope you'll find today's message challenging and encouraging, so let's lean in and engage.
Thank you for joining us today as we continue our series from the book of Ruth called Choose. It's a series about how our choices bring us closer to God, grow Jesus' character in us, and reveal him through us. Now, throughout Ruth, we see that making choices to know God produces blessings for us, the people we love, and our world. In week 1, we learned from Naomi and Ruth that no matter how many bad choices you've made, all it takes to get back on track with God is one decision to confess and return. It's how he begins the process of redemption and restoration, because we can't save ourselves. Last week, we saw how Ruth and Naomi chose to take small steps of faith without knowing where they'd lead or understanding the big picture of what God was doing. Since God's the only one who sees the big picture, faith always does what's good in the small details, trusting God to make something great out of them. Now, along the way, we're also learning the customs of the ancient world, a different time and a different place with different difficulties than Western society. Ancient customs can seem foolish to American readers because our society has economic and civil stability. We are rarely consumed by protecting vulnerable people and property from exploitation by brute force. And the book of Ruth doesn't command us to live out these ancient customs or even justify them. It just describes a time when safety meant meeting force with force, something that still happens today in places that lack economic and civil stability. Now, one of the ancient social norms was an interplay between honor and shame. And in a culture where personal honor has a high value, people will do everything possible to protect their reputation and prevent from being publicly humiliated. When there are no police officers, courts, jails, well, public disputes can lead to bloodshed very quickly. And so a goal within honor cultures is to prevent the escalation of personal disputes into family conflict, which then becomes tribal warfare, which eventually becomes genocide. And so to help make peace after public disagreements, you would never embarrass someone, even if they were wrong. You would never show someone up, even in victory. Keeping things honorable produced customs that limited how you publicly interacted with people of different ages, different economic status, and different genders. We see this in feudal Japan, where the 7 virtues of Bushido were written down to safeguard individual honor, and when they were upheld, they protected the whole nation. Honor and shame customs haven't completely disappeared from modern culture, but because most of our customs are unwritten, we think we don't have them, especially in business. For example, maybe you have a brilliant idea for a business, but you need the backing of influential people or financial investors. Your idea is so good, you know that all you need to do is get into the room and the business will sell itself. Well, the problem is that in America, it's hard to get into the room with the right people. The right people work in buildings with security, and they have corner offices on top floors with administrative assistants protecting their time. And our social customs prevent us from walking up to them at restaurant or visiting David Wallace at home. If you attempt to sell your idea in the wrong setting, you will be dismissed for making a fool of yourself and embarrassing the other person by making them have to reject you publicly. No matter how smart you are, no matter how good you are, or how important your idea is. Now, to get around these customs, we've developed the elevator pitch. The elevator pitch is a short description that explains your idea in a way that any listener can understand in a very short period of time. So since you can't get an appointment or approach these people on your own, you have to put yourself in a position where they're not being inconvenienced by your proposal, like just happening to join them in an elevator and completing your pitch before they get out. Now, since you rarely know when the right person will get into your elevator, you prepare your pitch in advance. So when the moment happens, you are ready to roll. So, how do you prepare your pitch? Well, the good people at Indeed.com have put together the 4 things you need for an effective elevator pitch. It always starts with introducing yourself. If you were already in a business relationship with this person, you could get an appointment. But because you don't, you have to make the right impression by being polite. Next, you provide a summary of what you do. You're letting them know that you're qualified to be making this pitch, not just some rando spouting off information they don't care about. Third is you explain what you want. See, when something is important and it really matters, we don't beat around the bush. We don't waste anyone's time. And our confidence shows that this isn't something we just thought up right then and there. And lastly, you finish with a call to action. You clarify what needs to happen next if they want to take this opportunity. You're showing them how they can accept your proposal. The elevator pitch is a way to navigate the customs that can get in the way of something amazing happening. And we know that this happens because we've got a show called Shark Tank, where you can watch people make their elevator pitches to people they would never get access to in real life. Today, we're going to see Naomi and Ruth navigate the customs that stand in the way of something important, and we'll see how faith in God's goodness and blessing helps us step into any situation with confidence that God is working for our good and His glory, even when the unexpected twists fill us with tension and anxiety. Now, speaking of tension, chapter 2 ended with a cliffhanger. Naomi said something mysterious to Ruth about the wealthy and influential man named Boaz. She said that he could be the family redeemer. To unravel this mystery, we have to spend just a minute on ancient Hebrew property rights. When the people of Israel entered into their promised land, each of the 12 tribes received land, and the tribal leaders divided that land into family farms. These family farms made up the backbone of their nation. In order to keep the land within the individual tribes, there were customs about how the farms could change hands. If a family farm failed, or if there weren't enough people to manage it, it wasn't taken away. Instead, another relative would manage the land until the family could get onto their feet. The close relative who did this was called the family redeemer. The family redeemer could earn income from the land, but they couldn't own it unless the family line failed or they married into the family. Naomi's husband's decision to leave their land was poor stewardship of their inheritance from God. Protecting and working a plot of land kept the land in shape to produce a crop that the whole tribe depended on. And when Naomi's sons died in Moab, the family farm was in danger of passing from them to another family member. For Naomi to regain her land, either she or Ruth needed to produce a child who would inherit it. If not, the land would pass on to another relative after they both died. In this desperate situation, though, there's good news. Naomi is very wise, and she chooses to demonstrate faith in God even with all of the customs standing in their way. It says this in Ruth chapter 3, starting in verse 1. One day, Naomi said to Ruth, "My daughter, it's time that I found you a permanent home so that you will be provided for. Boaz is a close relative of ours, and he's been very kind by letting you gather grain with his young women. Tonight, he will be winnowing barley at the threshing floor. Now, do as I tell you. Take a bath and put on perfume and dress in your nicest clothes. Then go to the threshing floor, but don't let Boaz see you until he's finished eating and drinking. Be sure to notice where he lies down. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down there. He will tell you what to do." "I will do everything you say," Ruth replied. So she went down to the threshing floor that night and followed the instructions of her mother-in-law. Naomi understood that her family land and her fortune were unavailable resources unless she remarried. Naomi's age and inability to bear children made this difficult. So you see, whoever married her wouldn't be able to produce an heir to inherit the land after their death, and the land would then have to pass on to another family member. But Naomi also understood that Ruth's best option for a home was with Boaz. Boaz was a good man, and he'd been very kind to Ruth when they were most desperate. She hoped that Boaz had taken an interest in Ruth and might be interested in marriage. So, believing that God would honor them as they lived honorably, she sat Ruth down and devised a plan to speak privately with Boaz. Now, in an honor-shame culture, during the age of patriarchy, if you missed our explanation about patriarchy, check out last week's message. Women, especially foreign women, couldn't simply walk up and begin openly engaging romantically with a man. It was considered dishonorable to both parties. Think of Lady Mary's struggles in Downton Abbey. Naomi needs to get Ruth in front of Boaz for an honest and vulnerable conversation, but the cultural expectations thereunder don't allow for this. If Ruth walks up and just starts talking to Boaz, he'll need to walk away to preserve their honor, or he'll have to ruin both of their reputations in the community by disrespecting their positions. Naomi has got to get Ruth onto an elevator alone with Boaz. So Naomi told Ruth to freshen up. Remember, Ruth is working as a field hand, and then to head to the harvest festival where Boaz will be working with his laborers to separate the barley from the stalks that they've cut. She's supposed to stay low-key until the party starts to wrap up, and then make a note of where Boaz goes to lie down to sleep. Now, if you're wondering why Boaz is sleeping outside on the threshing floor, you need to know that in ancient times, the only thing more valuable than water was food. Water and food were the source of most conflicts. You can't eat metal or fabric, and barley is the grain that will keep people and animals alive through the winter. Boaz and his workers are protecting their investment. So Naomi tells Ruth to wait until everyone goes to sleep, and then to go lie down at Boaz's feet and get the covers off of his feet. Why lie at his feet? Well, it's important to remember a few things. Lying down next to Boaz implies something specific. And in this culture, with a man who respects women, you're not just being too forward, you're ruining your own reputation and your chances. And if you're wondering why she's uncovering Boaz's feet, well, she's counting on the change in temperature to wake him up. In this culture of honor and shame, where men and women rarely interact, and even married people seldom touch in public, Ruth needs to wake Boaz up without touching him. Naomi isn't just some helpless old widow. She knows the customs and the limitations, and she is guiding Ruth through them, and she has thought of everything. Verse 7 says this, that after Boaz had finished eating and drinking and was in good spirits, he lay down at the far end of the pile of grain and went to sleep. Then Ruth came quietly, uncovered his feet, and lay down. Around midnight, Boaz suddenly woke up and turned over. He was surprised to find a woman lying at his feet. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am your servant Ruth," she replied. "Spread the corner of your covering over me, for you are my family redeemer." Ruth did exactly as Naomi said, and everything went exactly as planned. Boaz woke up and discovered a woman. Now it's dark, and it tells us that Boaz went to bed in good spirits, so he is probably a little disoriented. But Ruth let him know that it was her. Then she gave him her position. She said something specific. She said, I am your servant, Ruth. There's two things at play here. The first is that Ruth is actually working alongside his servants. And since he's allowing her to behave as one, she's clarifying that it's appropriate for her to be at the threshing floor. And she's showing that even though she's found a way around the customs, she will leave if he wants her to. She's spurning convention while still being respectful. I think this is something really important for us to consider when we need to engage counter to our culture's expectations. Each of us finds ourselves in situations where we're bumping up against the limitations that society places on us. And some of us face them more than others. In these moments, when we speak up and when we speak out, maintaining a respectful engagement allows us to say and do what is in our conscience while earning the respect of the people who are watching us. Maybe you're being mistreated by your supervisor. Maybe you feel like you're getting hassled by an officer. Maybe your parents are completely out of line and treating you like a child. Maybe your spouse is doing the same thing. Maybe you've gotten a speeding ticket from the robot on Allen Boulevard. Maybe you disagree with a government policy that actually is stupid. God never gives us permission to disrespect the dignity of another, even when they're wrong. If you're following Jesus, you're going to spend the rest of your life opposing evil. And while our emotion can prove a point, it's respect that changes hearts and minds. Remember, this is so important when we speak the truth to power, or our neighbors, or our family members. Now, lastly, Ruth pitches very deftly to Boaz. She asks him to spread the corner of his covering over her. Now, he's got a blanket that he could share with her, but Ruth is demonstrating world-class diplomacy. Hebrew may not have been her first language, but she's going full Lin-Manuel Miranda with wordplay here. See, in the original Hebrew, she uses the word kanaf when she says corner. And the word kanaf, like all words, has a semantic range. It can mean different things based on how it's used. Like cool can mean chilled, calm, or stylish, depending on the context. Kanaf can mean corner, edge, or wing. She's asking him to take her under his wing, to protect and provide for her like a mother bird. She's asking him to redeem them, to use his wealth and influence to restore the land and the property back to Naomi. And she's also calling back to something Boaz said to her in chapter 2 when he said that Ruth had come to find refuge under God's wings in Israel. Ruth has said who she is, what she does, and asked for what she needs. She's explained how Boaz can do his part. She's made her elevator pitch, and she's done it in a way that is respectful and honorable without damaging the relationship. Now, this is an extremely risky and vulnerable position for Ruth. She's just thrown herself into the shark tank with no idea of what will happen. And this is the part of the show where the sharks tear the person, the pitch, and the proposal to pieces and send it back with their counteroffer. If this goes poorly, she could lose the only help they have. She's risking everything for the chance of something better. In poker terms, she's all in. Ruth is demonstrating faith, but I want you to see that it's not a blind faith. She's taking this step based on all that God has already done. God led her to the land of Israel with Naomi. Godly mentorship from Naomi has gotten her to this point, and faith that if she acts in ways that honors God and others, God will take care of the rest. Faith believes that the God who got you here won't leave you here. See, when we believe that God is good and that God will provide, we will spring into action, trusting that God will meet us in the risk. If the Father gave us his Son when we were trapped in sin, and the Son sends his Spirit to give us strength and wisdom, then we can trust him not to leave us stranded when we seek him and we obey him. Verse 10 gives us the response of Boaz. "The Lord bless you, my daughter," Boaz exclaimed. "You are showing even more family loyalty now than you did before, for you have not gone after a younger man, whether rich or poor. Now don't worry about a thing, my daughter. I will do what is necessary, for everyone in town knows you are a virtuous woman." Boaz responds by asking God to bless Ruth for her life of faith. He also affirms her, not for her beauty or her capability, but for her dignity and her godly character. Boaz doesn't just see something in Ruth that is attractive to him, like her hard work or her diplomatic skills. He sees that God is at work in her life, producing beautiful and noble things in her and through her. There's no counter pitch. No, I'll do this if you do that. Or how do I get what I want while giving as little as possible in return? No, he just tells her that he will do whatever is necessary to make this happen because he wants to honor and nurture her virtue and her reputation. God honors Ruth's trust in him with even more honor from Boaz. Faith believes that God has more to offer than he's already provided. When we trust that God has cared for us, we also believe he will give us more than he's already provided. I know that I'm so scared of loss so often that I won't risk asking God for more. I'm often scared to risk deeper conversations with friends and neighbors, so I don't learn the truth about their lives or how to serve and support them. I'm scared of risking cordiality in order to build relationships of influence, to point them towards Jesus. You feel it too, right? Maybe you're scared of a risky conversation with a loved one. You don't want to lose comfortability to grow in intimacy. And maybe you're scared of not having enough money, so you don't want to risk giving to God and receiving his blessing. Giving financially is an act of faith that God promises to meet us in. Maybe you're scared of going back to school or asking for help with your kids. Maybe you're trapped by shame, but you don't want to tell someone that you need them to listen and pray for you. Whenever we're scared to risk, we're refusing to reach out for the abundant life that God promises to bless us with. And here's what I've had to learn. Living out a faith that dares to ask for more from God is much better than living in fear of losing what he's already given. See, I used to hold on so tightly to what God gave me that I wouldn't attempt anything that made me uncomfortable. In those moments, I still felt fear. And in fact, I was being ruled by it. The fear of loss is a fear that paralyzes and demoralizes. But when we lean in and we act with courageous faith, God energizes us to accomplish his plans. See, fear is a part of everyday life. And the question is whether or not you're going to pursue comfort and watch everything slip away or live in faith and be challenged with more. That's right. More is a challenge because comfortability is never long-term. Even when God blesses us with what we hope for, there's still going to be twists and tension. There's always going to be something he's challenging us to overcome through him. And it's about to happen right here in this story, because here is the twist and the tension that we've been talking about. Boaz says in verse 12, "But while it's true that I am one of your family redeemers, there is another man who is more closely related to you than I am. Stay here tonight, and in the morning, I will talk to him. If he is willing to redeem you, very well, let him marry you. But if he is not willing, then as surely as the Lord lives, I will redeem you myself. Now lie down here until morning." Boaz and Ruth know that they love each other. Their risks and their sacrifices prove it. But Boaz also knows that there's another man who has rights that have to be satisfied before they can be married. Boaz knows that to do right by Ruth means doing what's right in the eyes of the law and God. Ruth had to find her way into an elevator to get here, and now Boaz will have to make an elevator pitch of his own. And it's going to take some time and build some tension. Their faith is going to be tested as they await resolution. It's so important for us to remember that faith is always tested by time and tension. The more time and tension we endure, the more our faith grows. God grows our faith by asking us to do things in the right way, His way, instead of taking what we want in our own way, on our own time. Ruth and Boaz know what they want, but they're going to have to get it God's way by relying on the strength and patience He gives them. Don't miss this. Every act of faith produces and requires new acts of faith. Every time we receive God's blessing, we will find ourselves confronted by new opportunities that require more faith. If you ask Him for friends, you'll have to make sacrifices to maintain those friendships. If you ask Him for leadership, you'll have to live more responsibly. When God blesses your faith in any way, stewardship requires more faithful behavior. Following Jesus begins in faith, it continues in faith, and it is completed in faith. There's never going to be a time when we don't have to trust God and act with courage to receive, maintain, and even pass forward the blessings that He delivers when we obey Him. Every time we do, we risk what He's given us to receive all that He offers us so that we can invite others into it. So to get to this next step of faith, Boaz has to get Ruth out of their elevator. And he does so in a way that protects her virtue and reputation because nothing immoral has happened. He's protecting her reputation because that's what love does. So at daybreak, he fills her cloak with barley, places it on her back so she can leave like one of the workers would. And when she got home, she told Naomi everything that had happened between them and the twist. And in verse 18, Naomi says to her, "Just be patient, my daughter, until we hear what happens. The man won't rest until he has settled things today." And this is where we'll pick up next week. You're going to have to join us to see where all of these godly choices lead. Until then, I want to encourage you to consider these three things. The first is this: to live by faith, you have to prepare your mind. In order to receive the life that God offers for us, we have to abandon the idea that once we put our faith in Jesus, our life will eventually reach a point where we live comfortably and pursue our own plans from here on out. See, we're constantly shocked when situations arise to test our faith by time and tension because we haven't prepared our mind. But when we remember that faith isn't an action during our previous experiences, but something we live out in the present tense, and that we're going to be called to live continually in the future by faith, we'll live from a mindset that's prepared for the elevators of opportunity that present themselves. Second, we absolutely have to prepare our hearts. Before we act in faith, we usually consider the possibility that things won't work out like we hoped. And if we fear disappointment, we won't act. But preparing our hearts looks like surrendering in prayer to accept God's answer to us, whatever it is. This is what Jesus did at the cross when He said, "Not my will, but the Father's will." Boaz did this when he said he would redeem Ruth, but in the right way. He accepted what was out of his hands, and he would abide by the outcome. And he was still willing to risk disappointment to pursue Ruth. He knew about the other man. He knew about the possibility of confrontation. So he had also prepared his heart for the test of time and tension that was ahead. And lastly, we prepare our pitch. When we live lives of faith and we dare to act on the desires that God gives us, we become like Ruth and Boaz. We become beacons of hope. The people will see us and recognize the honorable and courageous character that God grows in us. And each of us has to be prepared for the moments when we find ourselves in life's elevator with people who don't have any hope. Jesus' friend Peter says it like this. He says, "But in your hearts, revere or honor Christ as Lord, and always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect." When we live faithfully, honoring Jesus as the Lord of our lives, we are preparing ourselves to point others to him as the reason we have hope, that he will restore and redeem anyone who comes to him in faith. The more we know him, the more we talk with him in prayer, the more we spend time with other believers, the more confidence we have to invite others to join us as we pursue him. Let's pray. Father, we're so blessed to know that you meet us when we step out in faith. And so I pray today that you would prepare our minds for the challenges and our heart for the tension and time that it takes. And as we wait on you, God, help us to pursue Jesus, to make him the Lord of our life, to live in obedience so that when people see our lives that are different and wonder about the hope we have, we can point them to you. God, teach us to do this with gentleness and respect as we navigate the customs of our world, and help us to always feel the hope that comes from trusting that you love us and will provide for us. In Jesus' name, amen. I want to thank you for joining us today. It's been really fun to spend this time together. I hope that you might consider finding ways that you could get more involved. Even if you feel like staying online, we've got opportunities for you to follow along. We have a podcast called Regarding Action. You can find that at beaverton.cc. We've also got opportunities for you to engage and ask your questions to us by email. And of course, if you'd like to join us, we have services right here in Beaverton at 8:30 and at 10 a.m. every Sunday. Hope you have a great week.